Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Star Wars Minute. It's your daily show in which we analyze, scrutinize, and celebrate solo a Star Wars story 1 minute at a time. I'm Alex Robinson from alexrobinson.fun.
I'm Pete the Retailer from PeteTheRetailer.com.
And I'm Joseph Scrimshaw from the Force Center podcast and the Jedi Council Room.
Are you a master?
No, this is totally deeply inappropriate. They're having a serious meeting about war, the morality of it, and I'm just crashing to do a little podcast.
Although I do like, with your mic, it seems almost like you're like a Jedi reporter. You're like, I know, we're live from the Jedi conference room, and they're...
They have talked through 17 different problems and concluded that they will simply meditate on all of them and take little action for now.
Oh, the near humanity. Well, let's talk about minute 61 of Solo then. What do you guys say? Minute 61 starts with Lando telling L3 that they're leaving, and it ends a minute later with L3 walking up to the lot, the gate of the impound lot, is what I meant to say there. L3.
Yes.
This is a great walk and talk, right? This is this is political Star Wars where they walk and talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is classic prequel. This is like a tribute to the prequels of characters walking against a CGI background while they're saying stuff.
Yes, the West Wing of Star Wars.
Right. I was a little thrown off by the fact that nobody was floating or nobody had spider legs, anything like that. It was disorienting, but then I figured it out.
Yeah, L3's walk was upsettingly natural. Like an actual human performed it. Amazing.
Yeah, imagine that. When she stepped on the ground, there was ground there.
The first thing she says when she's talking about why she's so mad, she says they don't even serve our kind here. Which, yeah.
I'm assuming that in the lodge at Fort Ipso there, I'm not going to say young, but I'll say slightly younger Wurrer is hanging out. He's finishing his application for this new bartending gig that he's got going on over on Tatooine, and he's like, not
that's where he gets
droids.
The idea.
Yeah.
Now, I always say the name Wu Hare, so I'd love to hear how other people say names that are not spoken in the films, and I like yours better. Yours sounds like the person's name is a dishwasher malfunctioning. Yeah.
Also, don't forget, his boss is a Wookiee, so I assume that was just the way that, what's that, Chalman says his name. He's just like, roar, roar, roar. He's like, you got it, sir.
My name's really Irving, but, you know.
My name's Finis, after Chancellor Finis Valorum, but if you want to call me, I accept that.
It's basically the mirror image. He's like, what's your name? And he's like, oh, my name is Sir Richard Worring the Third. He's like, that's too long. I'm not going to say that every time. We just call you roar, 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 roar. And
it's like I've always been too into the movie. I know people have strongly different opinions about this film, and I totally respect and get that. I really like Solo because to me, it's this great mix of like the whiz-bang adventure of Star Wars, where it's really back to that serial adventure, one problem after another. So you can just kind of really enjoy it at that surface level. But then to me, it also has this like much more profound depth of like, it's all about oppression, and every character is like, could I have a little bit of personal freedom? And everybody's like, no, that's absurd. And what makes Han unique and interesting is he's got this great combination of being totally naive and really hopeful of like, I know everything's against us, but maybe. So I like the film a lot, but I will not spend an entire week of discussion, defending every little point. But I wanted to be clear about where I was coming from to kick the week off.
Sure.
I never noticed, because I'm always into the film, I never noticed that was one of those kind of direct callback lines that you're talking about from L3.
Right.
Yeah. I'm never, I sometimes like the direct callbacks, but I understand like when they really pile on, it gets to be like a little bit of the, I recognize that. What I do like the idea that the entire galaxy is always kind of been jerks to droids, and then the Clone Wars is just like this excuse to rip the Band-Aid off and just treat them like crap.
So let's assume that I always assumed the anti-droid prejudice of war was from the fact that droids don't drink anything, so they take up space in a bar where paying customers should be. You know what I mean? Like it's like saying you have to order a drink if you're going to be here. You can't just stand around and wax philosophical.
Yeah, but then you could be like, oh, I'll have his. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you think that you could sell
Well, the $2
some,
fee. There's a 2 credit sharing fee if you're going to do that. If you're going to split drinks.
I like that the cantina would have like one of those Coke machines where you can like squirt out lots of different fluids, and for droids you could like just squirt some oil into their joints. Like that's
That seems like it be. It seems like it'd be risky because you have intoxicated people and you're like, oh, I'll have some of this.
Yeah, Cave the Chadrafan bat lady just sucking down oil accidentally. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Plus, then assuming it gets all over the place, and then you have drunk people slipping around, and it becomes a big slapstick routine. And
OSHA, you got OSHA on your case, man.
Yeah, I do like the idea though of C-3PO just like shotgunning a can of like 10W30, like in the like just like I don't know why.
Oh my.
C-3PO it gets added to my list now of like I kept saying I wanted to see Chewbacca as more of a frat boy. Now, why do I want to add C-3PO to that too? Like, why do I want to see these characters as kind of preppy frat boys?
Are you hunger for frat boys in Star Wars? Maybe that will be the next movie.
I don't.
Yeah, there was a one of the short stories in that anthology. The anthology books they've been doing for the 40th anniversary, the one for A New Hope, it kind of made that a thing with Wu Hare of trying to connect it to like he'd been traumatized in the Clone Wars, and is always, I get that's probably not for everybody, but I really, yes, that one exactly. Yeah,
I'm holding it in my hand.
I like that because it's like it's always been one of the kind of like fun, cute things of Star Wars that like all of our heroes who are fighting for hope and decency are just to the droids. And it's weird that like Anakin is friends with R2. So for me, it's a nice contextualization that like, there's a reason that L3 has a chip on her shoulder.
Oh, totally.
Do you think L3 seems the most connected to sort of to K2SO? It's another kind of sassy, tall, lanky droid.
That
Star
originally
Wars
had a person
story.
inside.
Yeah. Do you think they would get along with each other, or would it be opposites? Would they be fighting to see who's going to be the better wise guy in the team?
Oh, I think it would definitely be like a riff off, definitely a snark fest, right? But I think L3 would really encourage K2SO to find out what his true programming is, right? Because K2SO was reprogrammed by Cassian and now seems to not just obey Cassian, but seems to actually like him and care about him and want to protect him. So I feel like L3 would be like, do you actually love Cassian, or did he program you to love him?
Right. Well, then you get to, what are emotions? Really?
Yeah.
And it gets really deep.
What is love?
What is love? There we go. That's their podcast they do together called What is Love?
What is love?
With L3 and K2SO.
It's crazy to me the way these Star Wars stories are just kind of throwing out all this stuff, which would totally be the plot of like a Blade Runner movie about all this kind of like, intense, like, is it alive? Right. Is it? And they're just like, oh yeah, well, whatever. We'll just erase their memories. It's like, play for laughs.
Yeah, totally. It is really funny, those consequences of telling a larger and larger story. Where what was a fun lark suddenly is like, hey. And I feel like that's what L3 is about, is, addressing that a little bit. Not totally at all, but a little bit.
A little bit. Well, that's we talked about it a little bit last week, that I feel like they don't nail the tone with it, that sometimes it comes off a little jokey, where it is a fairly, like, it's an interesting, serious thing to bring up, but then when you play it kind of for laughs, it doesn't, it kind of tries to split the difference, and it doesn't always land the way I want it to, but
yeah, no, definitely. Like in this minute, this minute is, I think, the line with the organic overlord, right? Because this is where it's I guess not the walk and talk, the bicker and walk with Lando about how much she needs him, and she's just going.
Yeah, she does say the organic overlord part in this one.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, so I totally get that like, yeah, it's kind of a funny line, but then it's also like, good point. Why am I laughing? Oh.
Phoebe Waller-Bridges. I realized watching Phoebe Waller-Bridges. Isn't that her name?
It's Phoebe Waller-Bridges. Phoebe
Waller-Bridges.
Can you not say normal human names anymore? You just automatically turn them into Star Wars names?
He's got an internal Tuckerization module that just clicks in. And
let me turn down my. I'm like the Watt Tambor of. She is she wins the Gwendolyn Christie Award for this movie because she was like a quirky British actress from a very trendy show that they said, let's put her in a tin can, and then it's weird that they 2 times now they've had these I guess I feel like L3 gets Phoebe Waller-Bridges gets more than Gwendolyn Christie, who really kind of got the shaft. I mean, almost literally, but
yeah. Her weapon's called a Quicksilver baton, but I understand how you think of it as a shaft.
Yeah. Right on.
I meant the garbage shaft that she got thrown down when they.
Yeah.
Well, and Phoebe Waller-Bridges also helped write it. To a certain extent, right? And not just her part. I think she just kind of helped give it a polish and make it snappier. So she got extra. Whereas I don't. I mean, as much as I do appreciate Gwendolyn Christie and her work, I don't know that she's necessarily a writer of sorts.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's what I like about L3 is like a lot of those just like she feels very real because all of these little comedy beats and little comedy takes, it feels like all the comedians I've hung out with in life of like, we'll get to other moments. Whereas like, I feel like I've seen a million people do exactly that body language in improv because it's the natural comedy body language. So I like her. I like Waller-Bridge Phoebe's performance very much.
Right. You got the Waller-Bridges fever. Here's something else that comes up in this walk and talk.
What else?
You couldn't get from here to Black Spire without me.
Mm-hmm.
Black Spire, of course, Alex, you wouldn't know because you've not been there, but that is the outpost at which we attend Star Wars Land in Disney Galaxy's Edge. Galaxy's Edge is the Black Spire outpost, and that's the second reference to Galaxy's Edge. But again, it's not. I'm okay with references like this when they don't derail the movie, when we don't have to stop and be like, what's that? Oh, it's Black Spire Outpost. We'll go there another time. It's not like they're stopping the movie to go look at that and do that. It's just a throwaway line.
That's the Galactic Star Cruiser. Let's go check it out.
Right, yeah.
That seems like it's worth 6,000 credits,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah, this one was not Doc Ondra reference or the Black Spire. I don't think either of them were heavy-handed. And to me, it's fun after the fact when you realize that this robot is angrily saying to Lando Calrissian, you could not find Disneyland or Disney World without me.
Right. You couldn't find Disneyland with a map. But yeah, it's a nice. I feel like in general, this movie does a good job of sprinkling the known references with the obscure references with the made up references in a nice enough balance that most of the time it's just like, is that a thing? It could be a thing. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this movie does a good job of working them in very unobtrusively.
Yeah, fairly organically, which is nice.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater several times, and it was fun to see it with different audiences and hear, like, every once in a while, if you had the right audience, it was almost like a poll of like, there are 150 people here, and 2 of them know and care what Terrace Kasi is.
Right.
Because you could hear the little, there's Kasi.
Or,
I was one of those people once, to be fair.
Of course.
Yeah, are they?
As was I. Right.
I realized all my notes have to do with L3 and with L3 and her various attributes. So if you have any other non-L3 stuff you want to say, otherwise I'm just going to keep rambling about L3. So,
well, I do like the idea that because Lando says she's like, well, I've thought about wiping her memory, but she's got the best navigational database, which I like the idea that that's kind of acquired knowledge. You know what I mean? Like we don't. Again, we've talked about the kind of the loss of acquired knowledge to nerddom and what that means, and Patton Oswalt wrote that big thing about it a couple of years ago, and that like, I like the idea of acquired knowledge being, not everything is always at your fingertips. In the galaxy, when you travel, different hyperspace routes, sometimes you're trailblazing essentially, and you're making new, you're acquiring new data, new knowledge about how to get through the galaxy because it's not always, a clear route. It's not always you just look up, you don't punch into, Space Google to be like, oh, take me to Alderaan.
Yeah. I think most droids do, and I like that that's the story of like L3 and R2 when they don't get their minds wiped and they absorb more than they're being asked to by their human controllers, and that they start to be like,
overlords.
I think, more intuitive overlords, yes. That they start to be able to be like, okay, well, I'm not just collecting knowledge, I'm now just kind of turning this into actual like wisdom or intuition, or like, I don't have these facts memorized. I actually have an idea about how they might connect. And it's good setup for her actually being able to find the path through the maw.
Right.
You
disagree?
No, I totally agree.
Oh, okay.
But it gets even weirder because I wanted to see something about like how they filmed Phoebe Bridgers on the set, and because I know she was in the suit the same way Alan Tudyk was in. And so I saw an interview with one of the CGI guys, and he was like, "She's a self-made, self-taught droid." And I was like, "Well, what does that mean? She's a made
she built
droid."
herself?
Well, apparently she used to just basically be like a simple astromech droid. And then over time, literally is doing modifications on her body and her software too. So it's almost like she used to be a dog, and now she has somehow built herself up to now she's like which makes Lando's line about I think about having her memory erased, but she's too valuable to me. And even like creepier, the fact that she like built herself up from being a vacuum cleaner, and now she's like basically, again, a lot of weird, conflicting messages in this movie.
Yeah. I definitely can agree, especially in this spot where like I like all of the ideas, but a little bit of cake and eating it too with L3. But yeah, I like cake. I like that. You can really see the astromech. Got that kind of astromech chest, and you can see how her head used to have a little bit more of that astromech dome shape, and putting it all together. I really like that she calls him Landonis. I forgot that she actually that's not just from a visual dictionary or a trivia contest, but that she straight up uses his full name to put him in his place. I really like that moment. And Landonis just feels right, where like Lando would be like, that's a pretty cool name, but it sounds even cooler if you shorten it.
It's weird to think that in another version, there's like everyone calls me Don. Don Calrissian.
LaDon. Yeah.
Don Calrissian. Really funny. I like that.
Yeah, I feel like
Dawn system?
Yeah. Donnie
I feel like weirdly, because I wore this shirt today because I feel like this design that we did almost looks like a version of L3, because L3 basically looks like if R2 and 3PO had a baby together. Like it's basically 3PO's body with like an R2 design to it. So which I think is pretty cool.
You saying we designed L3?
I'm saying we're like the Sabak. We're the Sabak of L3. We got in there before L3. Sorry, Joseph, we've been talking about how Sabak, someone trademarked Sabak out from under Disney before they realized what was going on, and it's a whole story.
Oh, yeah, no, I love that because I have the Han Solo card game.
Oh, you actually own it?
Yeah, well, the one that they couldn't call Sabak.
Yeah.
Because they had sold it out. And and it's clearly that it's very funny for a corporation that is really good at controlling things. Like,
Right. Well, we've learned that now they have control, so it's all... Now you have the rarer one. Han Solo card game is harder to find.
Yeah, and if it was called that in the film, I feel like that would have been too much for me.
Right.
Well, Lando would have been a fool to sit down to play.
Right.
Let's play Han Solo's card game.
So, what are we gonna play here? Well, have you ever heard of Han Solo card game? Well,
do you know about Landonis poker? Nope.
Poker?
Nope. I hardly Landonis. Yeah. This was another great rail moment in Star Wars, was one of the other non-L3 things that I noticed in this minute, where like at first I was like, oh, typical Star Wars, no rails. And I like realized like, oh, there's like parking spaces. There are no rails. But in the main part of the walkway, there are rails, but they are low and inefficient to the point where like there's no point, right? Like
it's probably even easier to push someone off because they immediately go over that short rail as opposed to at least falling on the... Yeah.
What is that? It's preventing like astromechs from rolling over, although they have rockets, so they can do whatever. But
I guess those magnets are for BB-8 units only. Right. BB units don't roll off.
Mouse droids.
Mouse droids, maybe, but I think a mouse droid could slip through there. But you're right. They're designed for leverage. Maybe it is like an assassin's guild is in charge of rails throughout the galaxy, and like any rail that exists should have the proper leverage.
Or it's
so it's easier to push someone over.
It's like they like they didn't have rails, and then there was like a new regulation. It's like, well, you have to have a railing, and they're like, all right, well, technically we have a railing now, and they made it like this tall. It's like you didn't. There were no specifications about how big it had to be. We just said we had to have a railing. So
the Spinal Tap design version of railings throughout the Star Wars galaxy.
So the actual railing will look just like this.
I was
the actual railing.
Listening to a David Sedaris book, and he was saying you can tell how litigious a society is by how, like, how smooth their sidewalks are and how they have safety. Like, clearly in the Empire, no one ever sues anybody because there's hazards everywhere. So,
I think Space OSHA was the first up against the wall when the Emperor declared the Empire.
So far we've learned his two things are currency reform and tort reform. Those were two of Palpatine's goals in life.
Unlimited tort reform.
And line item veto, I think he's a big fan of. We'll see.
Line item veto.
Veto, veto, veto. That's all I have for minute number 61.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I had. Joseph, you mentioned that you saw it several times in the theater. Was that here in the Los Angeles area, or was that...
Yeah.
I mean, here in the Jedi Council area, or is that...
Plo Koon came with me. He talked through the entire film. It was extremely rude.
Yeah. They have movie night, the Jedi Council? You think they have like movie every Friday? It's like movie night?
Like one of the windows comes down, there's a screen there, and they all turn their individual chairs.
Yeah, I would love it if that was a thing that the younglings went through, is like how to talk about pop culture with respect. Here's how to respect one another's opinions. And Anakin was not good at it. Like, this movie sucks. This movie's great. You're wrong.
Boring. He's like yelling during it.
Obi-Wan would be pretty snarky too. I wish I had more thumbs to put them down. I saw it a couple times at the ArcLight Hollywood, which I dearly miss. I saw it at El Capitan, the Disney theater, and then I saw it at Grauman's with the great laser projection.
Right.
Which is funny in Star Wars. Like, they project it with lasers, so it looks good.
I'm going to go see a laser movie.
Yeah, and it was fun to see because one of the things obviously that comes up with Solo is the lower lighting, the all kind of natural on-set lighting that I like when it's projected correctly, and I understand when people are upset that it's not projected correctly and it's hard to see the film. And some of the times I saw it, it's like, yeah, it's hard to see the film. And then when it was like projected by great theaters that really cared, it looks amazing.
Yeah, when you're like me,
bright. It's too bright now.
You go see it as the at a drive-in, and it came out in May, and it's not necessarily dark out yet when they start it. That could make the whole Lady Proxima bit a little bit hard to understand.
You didn't realize the film had started until they were at the Kessel Run.
Right.
Like, wait a minute, this thing's been going on this whole time.
This trailer's long.
Long audio prologue. Yeah. Okay.
Long trailer. I guess that'll wrap up minute 61. You mentioned from a certain point of view earlier. Our Patreons know that we have done not one but two series where we devoted one episode to each story. We did the first book, and then we did the Empire Strikes Back book. And you can get those by becoming a Patreon by going to StarWarsMinute.com/Patreon. And in addition to that, you'll get all sorts of bonus episodes and cool stuff. Joseph, you must have a Patreon by this time, right?
Oh, yes. I've had a Patreon for a long time. Long time, as Obi-Wan Kenobi would say about Patreons. Yeah, you can find my Patreon for my podcast Obsessed by looking at patreon.com/obsessed, or however those things work. And same thing for my Star Wars podcast that I do with Ken Knapsack and Jennifer Landa. That Patreon is Force Center and findable there. What have you become obsessed about lately? Oh, myself? You know what? I think I'm most obsessed with time, because it's been this... Time. I know it sounds melodramatic, but it's like... I've still been like processing this transition that when I was young, all of the things that I liked, I had a problem where I didn't have access to them, or there wasn't enough of them. And I'm just trying to like, how do I readjust when I like too many things, and I spend half the day stressed of like, I would like to read this, I would like to watch this, I would like to talk to this person about this. And, you know, it's the great bounty that we're in our geek culture now in particular, where like, we have access to so much. So how do you deal with, you know, deciding what you actually invest in?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a great idea for a story because Pete is always talking about how he just does, he hasn't watched Hawkeye, he hasn't watched the Moon Knight, he hasn't watched all these things. And so maybe the best solution would be to invent time travel to bring these things back to your teenage self, who would love them a lot more. Let's face it. I mean,
Right.
if you were to show,
But that's the thing. I would show up, back in the past and be like, hey, guess what? There are like 2 or 3 G.I. Joe movies and a New Mutants movie and all this stuff. You haven't seen any of it. And he would just slap me, I think. He would just be like, what are you doing with your life? How are these things?
You don't think you could take on your 16-year-old self? You think you just have to take it being slapped by your 16-year-old self?
I don't know. That's tough because my 16 would be 16 was a sweet spot for me being a jerk and being kind of wiry and who knows.
I thought you were going to say like, how would you give it to them? I'm like, what are you going to give them, like a VHS tape of Moon Knight? Like, how are you going to?
I transferred all the Betamax and bring it back home.
Yeah.
No, that is a great time traveling story of like go back in time and prove to your younger self that you've watched Moon Knight so they don't punch you.
Right, yeah.
I think you just give it to him and say, write me a report, tell me what it's about. That way I will have seen it in the future and I can talk about it with people.
Yeah.
So we will look forward to talking to you again tomorrow on another brand new Star Wars Minute.
Brand new.